It's on, right?
It's on.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was asked yesterday as to what my topic would be, and I didn't have one. I usually don't. I let it be like hovering and wait for the right moment and the topics to present themselves, as it were. As I was about to start my day today, I recalled something that I used to experience when I was in my, right after high school. So I was around 18, and I used to be a jewelry designer. And I did that for almost a decade, right before I got into teaching, right before I came to the Dhamma, actually. The experience I was reminded of had to do with every single drawing that I used to do. So basically I used to draw a piece of jewelry, whether it was a ring, a necklace, or whatever, but it had to start on a brand new, crisp, white sheet of paper. Now, not every design, every drawing, as you can imagine, was going to be a seller, so you would have a lot of things that you just end up in the trash bin. Now, because I was using a pencil, lead pencil, this portion of the palm would get smudgy. And as I was drawing, all of a sudden I would notice that the bottom portion of the page, the white crisp paper, was getting dirty and dirtier. Now, what does that have to do with today's topic? Forgiveness is something that, as human beings, we struggle with. Really. We talk about it. We are encouraged to have a forgiving attitude towards situations, towards individuals. Sometimes it works. Sometimes we suppress our emotions so well that it, for all intents and purposes, might even look like it disappeared until the moments present themselves and suddenly, where did that anger come from? To me, the smudgy portion of the palm, I forgot what you call this area. I'm sure there's an anatomical name for it, is very similar to me saying, you know what, I forgive this person, forgive myself, etc. Start with a brand new sheet of paper. Yes, I'm excited. And then, all of a sudden, this interaction that I'm about to have with this person, or myself, for some reason, it bears with it, it carries with it this powerful weight, emotional weight. Usually not a good one. It's negative. So that's what I will try to talk about today. Obstacles in forgiving. What stands in the way of us forgiving? I mean, brand new sheet of crisp white paper, brand new year, right? The first Sunday of the decade. Just another sheet of paper. How do I find my way around? How do I start? How do I begin to apply some of the ideals that I hold dear? Yesterday we had a 2-hour meditation, for example. Every time we sit, I encourage individuals to start with a beginner's mind, for example. That's another way to start, using the analogy of a crisp white sheet of paper. Unfortunately, most of us don't know how to do that, at least on a consistent basis. because of this thing called the mind. We as human beings, we're always, for me it's like the image I like to use, often I've used it in the past, sticky fingers. We like to hold on to things. We like to, whether we like it or not, we like to hold on to certain memories. Usually because of the brain's tendency, propensity to have this thing called negative bias. We often times see ourselves leaning towards having this negative, anticipatory dread, fear of the worst case scenario that is about to ensue. Out of a multitude of other possibilities, we pick that one. Well, what are the odds? What are the odds for this thing to happen? Oftentimes we never talk about that. We never actually face that head on and say, instead of taking it for granted, we go by, we basically follow the emotional leanings, the tendency, the emotional weight of certain thoughts, experiences that have left their mark on us. And living on this planet today, we are getting plenty of supportive elements, shall we say, that further nail us into this negative bias, anticipating even worse and worse. And usually it starts with ourselves, which I would like to bring the attention back to of today's talk. Crowded in the head. We're basically crowded in the head. We're top heavy in the head with so many memories, so many thoughts, so many possibilities. Usually fear plays a big role in this. Confusion is another, which basically they, rub shoulders together. As long as we're crowded in the head with thoughts, I know what you did to me, but I forgive you because I'm the bigger person, etc. So I'm going to forgive you. Okay? The mouth is saying it. Even the inner narrative might be playing that tune. However, viscerally speaking, we're completely detached from that. Sense. It doesn't even register a feeling tone to it, what that forgiveness means. Why? Because the mind, the brain itself is crowded with other thoughts, ideas. The Buddha used the word vipallasa. Basically, you can think of them as distortions of the mind. And there's few doorways for vipallasas to actually have an impact on us in our lives. One is sanya, or perception, in our perceptions. The other one is consciousness. And also it's tinged by our views. And usually when we use the views in the Dhamma, we're talking about wrong views, which allows us to carry these negative distortions or perceptions, distorted perceptions in the first place. So they manifest in the form of four, usually. Seeing the impure as pure. Seeing the impermanent as permanent. Seeing the unpleasant as pleasant. Seeing the non-substantial, or usually you might have come across it in the form of non-self, anatta, as atta, as a person, as me. This is my individuality. This is who I am. These are my thoughts. These are my likes and dislikes. My preferences. My ideals in life. My principles. So I'm hoping that you're getting an idea as to what I meant by crowded in the head. When we have crowded our head with so much distortions, it's very difficult for us to see what's in front of us. memories, associations, etc. Pretty much kind of tie your hands behind you when it comes to being constructive in living your life. Case in point, starting a new year. A blank sheet of white paper to start drawing your year on. I mentioned resentment. Resentment of what? Of ourselves. Of the incident, of the situation. And not forgiving ourselves because of it. It might have been just a memory or a few things from our childhood. I don't know about you, but many people I've come across in the capacity of a therapist or a teacher, where many of us are kind of scarred in childhood. Things, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a caretaker, it's an adult figure, powerful, a person in a powerful position, whereby this little child loses the sense of safety, sense of security, that we all need. Including animals need it, because it directly impacts the central nervous system, the way the brain develops, the way the relationship building blocks are going to be put into place. That thing is now on very shaky ground. If that child did not have the sense of safety inculcated in them, supported by that. Yeah, we add a few decades on the person and you give them a few degrees, you go send them to Harvard, Stanford, or whatever, fine. So you got a lot of jargon to carry with you. Crowding the brain even more, crowding the head even more. So we have more excuses now to justify as to why we are not forgiving. Add to that what's happening in the world. We have plenty. Fires in Australia, world geopolitics. So people are becoming less and less able to perceive themselves as capable of or having the capacity to forgive. And it's so easy for us to point the finger. It's very easy. I mean, that's one of the best tools that Mara has. In Buddhist teachings, we have Mara. The Great Evil One is called. Why? Why pointing the finger out is evil? Why? I mean, I do want to change the world around me. I mean, what's wrong with that? Nothing. However, where am I starting from? We have these three things called defilements, according to the Dhamma. Defilement of attachment, defilement of hatred or anger or aversion, and defilement of indifference or delusion. This is me, this is who I am, this is mine, this is my pain, etc. Whether we live in a perfect society or in one that's very decrepit, leaves a lot to be said, type of a society. So long as these three defilements are not addressed, are not extricated, removed, eradicated, not much is going to change. So we're just, counting our blessings until the balance runs out. The credit runs out. So that brings us back to the sense of, or to the purpose of, seeking forgiveness. Pointing the finger outside of us is very reminiscent to me to starting a revolution. I am starting a revolution. I'm showing my revolt against a situation, a status quo that does not agree with my ideals, with my beliefs. Okay? Essentially, there's nothing wrong with that. If I am coming from a solid, wholesome place. And next would be for me to go ahead and take care of, okay, what can I do? Do I write a letter to my congressman, my representatives? Do I send a donation? All great things. But again, let's check in. Let's check in with ourselves. And I've taken some notes. That's why I'm referring to this. Forgiveness is the other side of love. Show me a person who can forgive, I'll show you a person who can really, really, really love. So there is a sense of trust, because love cannot be without a presence of trust. So who are we trusting? Trusting ourselves. Oftentimes, as meditators, we face obstacles. In the Dhamma, we have nivaranas, or the hindrances, the 5 hindrances. They're very powerful, but instead of enemies, we can look at them as our teachers. Often we come to the meditation cushion to sit to meditate, or get in our car to drive off to work, start the day, having some type of an anticipation of something. Perhaps, usually for most of us, it's a desire to repeat something pleasant that has taken place. Oh, I wish this would happen today. That is, if we can shut down the noise of the anticipatory dread that I mentioned earlier. So even that can be a struggle for many of us, to think about the positive. I wish I have this thing happen, repeat itself. So oftentimes many people will go ahead and think about, you know, I've had this very important, a very unique meditation experience happen to me on a retreat in Jakarta while I was there doing an intensive, and I would love for that to repeat itself. We're setting ourselves up for failure. This is where I need you to bring yourself back to the clean sheet of paper that you're starting with again. That's the beginner's mind. So how can we start this year with a beginner's mind vis-a-vis forgiveness? Can we? If we're resolute in doing so, then we have to look at a few things. One of them is fear. Am I afraid that whatever I experienced would repeat itself? If I trust you, will you then not stab me in the back? Will you not betray me? Will the government not betray me? Will the president not betray me? Will this person not betray me? Will the situations not betray me? Now, I mentioned revolution earlier because Dhamma is a revolution, the way I understand it. You're revolting against your own 3 defilements. You're saying, I am better than them. I can actually start with a new sheet of paper, with every single encounter that I have, with myself. That's the first encounter, by the way, with ourselves. In therapy sessions, I get a kick out of people sometimes, you know, when I speak with, give an intervention. One of the easiest interventions is, when you leave the house, look in the mirror and say, damn, you look good. People start giggling. It's like, what? And because I know what's happening. No, I don't. Have you seen this? Have you seen that? No, I have to really get fixed up first. And I have to get 301 people to stand in line and say, no, you look good. For me to kind of go, okay, I guess I do. Wow. Now we do this inner narrative, negative self-talk. I don't know who it was. Maybe it's your 3rd grade teacher. Maybe it's your dad, your uncle, your aunt, somebody. Who knows? Maybe it was an ad. But got stuck making up one of that, the crowded elements in your brain, in your mind. And that unwillingness to relinquish is a problem. It's one of the obstacles of forgiveness. So before we go ahead and forgive anyone, we need to start to see, okay, where do I stand about this whole forgiveness business? Is it even possible? Let me start from there. Do I have enough love for myself to go ahead and say yes, looking in the mirror and say, you know what, I know you've tried. I want you to try again today. And I trust you. I'm not going to put a bullseye on my head and walk around like that. No. Yesterday's experiences will allow me to become stronger and wiser. And the lessons from the past I can actually apply today by choosing differently. I've written something some time ago, and I found it this morning, and I want to share it with you. I wrote this, I think, last year. Remember, forgiveness is like the other side of love. I wrote here, love is gutsy enough to stand on the very edge of eternity between the dead past and the unborn future. Love is courage. Love is audacity. So chill out, friend, and smile. And forgive yourself every time you forget to love as you step from one moment to another. Forgiveness does not manifest necessarily with us introducing a new relationship into our world. Otherwise, it would be like as futile as Elon Musk or NASA or JPL or any government thinking that, well, we need to go ahead and colonize another planet. Well, first of all, let's fix this planet that we screwed up before we go ahead and screw up another one. I mean, it's crazy. So thinking that by you getting into a new relationship so that by some miracle forgiveness is going to show up is like that couple who decides to, well, let's have another baby so that the marriage could actually cure itself. Let's reignite this marriage by having another baby. Good luck. Horrible idea. As a teacher, I faced that situation where parents thought I was a babysitter for some reason. And then as a therapist, I've taken the brunt of that. I mean, it's a very honorable position to be in because here you have the possibility of applying what I'm talking about. However, what's this child's fault in all of this? So responsibility is another factor in forgiveness. When I say I forgive you, I'm also taking responsibility for my actions, my thoughts that I will be choosing, as well as the interactions that I will be placing myself in and us in this relationship, whatever it may be. Instead of tossing the responsibility on this other outside situation. If only the world, if only this person is no longer there, or if this person is there versus the other one, then my situation is going to get a lot better. Which takes us back to the three defilements. The three defilements, so long as they're there, they're just like looking at us, making faces and saying, you haven't done your work. I knew people who would, again, talking about couples, for example, who would have arguments, disagreements constantly. And their way of coping with avoidance was hopping on a plane, first class tickets to the most exotic places you can imagine. 5, 7-star hotels. Why? Well, they were hoping that that would be their way of forgiving each other and starting anew, afresh. We don't have to go berserk like that, but by the way, these people I'm mentioning, they, oftentimes divorced, sadly. Why? Because they never actually sat face to face and communicated what their needs were. There was no conversation or processing of what forgiveness is to the other person, and vice versa. Maybe one person did, the other person didn't. So it also behooves upon us to take responsibility. We often don't do that. And that's my invitation to you, to think about it in those terms. I know I'm talking about several subjects and trying to weave them to get into a cohesive unity. And the one simile that comes to mind is the one used in the Dhamma. The Dhamma is so replete, like it's full of similes, which I'm so grateful for the Buddha to do that, including his disciples. One of them is where you have a mention of the 3 types of people. And the first one is basically resembles a line a groove made in stone, in granite, let's say. Another one is made on sand, a line made on sand. And another one is a line made on the surface of water. You're getting the idea as it relates to forgiveness. Some of us are very much, I wouldn't say etched, we have used a bulldozer, jackhammer to put our groove in that granite. And we have spotlights on it to show, hey, this is what happened to me. I will not forget it. In fact, I'm going to make you remember it at every corner. The other person is like, you know what? I know this hurt me, but it's the line in the sand. It's still there, but sooner or later, events happen and the other person shows kindness, and time also heals in some cases. But to begin with, it was made on sand. So the person was not prone to take it so personally. So the delusion for that individual, the delusion which is the third part of the defilements I mentioned earlier, this is me, this is my pain. You're not going to take it away from me, type of a mindset. It's far less severe in a person who fits the second category, the line in the sand. Eventually the wind, the blizzard comes and whoosh, wipes it clean. Now, how about the third one? I kind of like the third one better than, the other two. A line in the water. It might create a ripple, but the ripple is just going to expand and just you won't even know after a while that it was there. Now the interesting thing is that the Buddha also used a fourth one. And he said, it's like the footprints or the trail of the birds flying in the sky. You won't even know they were there. That's the Arahant that he always spoke about, the fourth stage awakened one. A person who has completely exhausted, destroyed all the 3 defilements. There's no attachment for that person. There's no hatred, anger, despite what's happening. And there's no delusion or ignorance as to this is mine, this is happening to me. There isn't that. Because that individual understands that in essence we're just this, what you see, what you experience, based on certain conditions that have met at this point in time under certain circumstances and for this time period. Change one of those conditions, boom, everything falls apart. It's like a deck of cards. You create a castle, remember when we used to do those things on a table? Playing cards, we build castles, and then something happens, somebody jolts the table, boom, everything comes crashing. It's very much like that. And the crashing is a person's death. Yes, that does happen to us, we die. Which is a crucial support if we're still having a difficulty with forgiveness. I used to be stunned years ago when I would see individuals who are holding such grudges against each other. And I would ask this question, although it might seem very naive, but I would ask the people who were involved in one way or the other, I was like, do you realize that we're going to die? Like, where is this going to be, like, which vault in the Swiss bank account are you going to hide this hatred in? Where? You're going to get frail? The divine messengers are going to come. Divine messengers like the gray hair, the wrinkles, legs don't work, whatever, old age. I mean, what are we holding on to, really? Whether it's anger, resentment, hatred towards ourselves, or someone else, or a set of circumstances, situations. So, how are we with time, Bhante? Oh, yes. So, I think I should stop? Okay. Your silence says it all, Bhante. Okay. Thank you for listening so far, but I would love to hear your thoughts because we do have about 10 minutes. Yes?
Thank you, Chandana. Nice to see you again. As a matter to see another perspective of the point that you are talking about forgiveness, and in this drop of the ocean, compared to the outside, on which now talking about forgiveness, but on the other side, we have President Trump. Don't forget something like an Iranian general did a long time ago, and just ago come out and decide to kill it. So in this confusion, my point is how the previous Buddhas, the previous Buddha, I don't know too much about it at all. So can you talk a little bit about how they approach to Nirvana?
Yeah. Well, from what I'm extracting from your question is what would be the Buddhist answer to this situation?
The previous ones.
Well, yeah, we can go back to the one that we have record of.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, Gautama the Buddha. Whatever principles I'm talking about in reference to the Dhamma are all from the mouth of the Buddha. Let's say the 3 defilements I mentioned. They weren't spoken by me or someone that I could recognize here, now, whatever. It was spoken by this individual that we, historians and practitioners, most importantly, unbroken chain of teachers have carried to us. But why would the Buddha say these things if there weren't around him? So obviously inequity was there. Obviously injustices were happening. You have King Bimbisara, for example. His own son, the crown prince, Ajatasattu. Because he was under the influence of someone who was evil-minded in a sense, he wanted to be in power, and toppled the Buddha himself, he went and persuaded Crown Prince Ajatasattu, who loved his father, King Bimbisara. By the way, he was a very close disciple of the Buddha, to kill him. So we're talking about patricide. And then this person eventually comes in front of the Buddha, and he's, I always looked around, like in the suttas as I'm reading it, like, okay, where do I see the hatred? I mean, obviously there's got to be some resentment in the Buddha towards this person who killed his own father. His father used to be sitting there next to him, and now this person is gone. Why? Because of this individual. And I would try to see between the lines, as it were, to see if there's any hatred, anger, aversion. There's none. Instead, the Buddha is talking about loving kindness. Now, you, Isaac, are sitting on your own sitting cushion, not mine. You're using your own life force, your own life energy, your own life, basically. Not mine, not anyone else's. You can try, but you will be failing every single time to live and to go outside of those boundaries. Now, the Buddha constantly brought the person's attention back to the very, very basic fact, which was the Four Noble Truths. How is your life being spent as it relates to you reducing your suffering first? First. Now, the outside world is always going to invite you, pull you in to the drama, into the dance. Hey, come join. Hey, I'm giving you a lot of reasons. Come. So if you're going to leave there and come over here, that means you've already took the bait. You've taken it. Taken the bait of Mara, because now your life is passing by. Who knows, maybe in 3 more minutes your life is going to be gone and there's a life wasted, as far as the Dhamma is concerned, as far as this tradition is concerned. So first handle your business. While you're doing that, try to help the world around you. But don't go ahead and be sucked in. Lean into the world outside first and say, no, when I have the time, then I'll come and do my work on myself. Mara loves that. Okay? That is basically being pulled into confusion and fear, which are the tools that Mara loves, and which we're seeing around us. So, ignorance or suffering, suffering's cause of it, which is ignorance or craving, is not from the outside world. In Buddhism, teachers will always tell you, if they're teaching it properly, that the outside world can never give you suffering. When I heard that, I was like, wait a minute. I mean, I am a child of war. I've seen pain. I know what it means to be this close to death. Torture, I know. So what do you mean life cannot cause you suffering? Until I understood what they're talking about. It's my craving to want something other than what's taking place in front of me. The attachment to it. The delusion that this is happening to me out of all these people. How unfair. That causes suffering. First and foremost. So you handle that, then you have the capacity to go outside and change the world around you. The Dhamma is not about complacency, but it's not also about contention, looking for ways to quarrel and to try to beat the world around us into submission. That's not the Dhamma that the Buddha taught of. So that's my answer. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, thank you for the topic. At the beginning of your talk, you said that we have grown to be less forgiving. I mean, I've only lived this lifetime in a few decades, but I feel like if I look back at history, like we've always struggled with forgiveness. So, can you elaborate on like how we've become less forgiving? I feel like it's always been a struggle. So how are we less forgiving, and if so, why?
Lack of more and more interactions with one another. This is becoming less common, where human beings come together. This was normal for our ancestors. It was necessary, in fact, for growth. Remember what I said about earlier about the sense of security that a child needs? The foundation of stability? That's impacting your central nervous system. So is this. The child would grow up in this, taken care of by not just one mother, but so many mothers, so many grandmothers. So many fathers would sit around the fire and teach them stories. Elders. We're lacking in that. I've witnessed in shock children today sitting across from each other and not being able to know what to say to one another. This is really horrific. Why? Because we have a better relationship with this. With iPads. I mean, I have nieces and nephews. I know, I've seen it. They're spending more time on iPads trying to play this game, although it might seem not that dangerous. However, it is bringing down the possibility of their interaction with one another. That interaction is at the crux of human relationship, obviously, which is also at the foundation of knowing what it is required to have the capacity to forgive. So if I cannot relate with you as a human being, I'm going to have a tough time forgiving you. Because you're going to do something, or I'm going to do something that's going to register viscerally in a very bad way. In my body, I'm going to feel it. And every time I see you, I'm going to feel that. And that unknowing of this very unusual, unwholesome feeling is going to turn into a form of resentment, into a form of anger towards you. And I will not know how to speak about it, which is the other dreadful fact that we're coming across. So, you know, in the 70s there were, I think it was in the 70s, they had these two chimpanzees, baby chimpanzees, where one of them was, they were newborn, and one of them was sitting, you know, they put it in a lab, and this child, the infant, was wrapping itself around this, for all intents and purposes, looked like a mother chimpanzee, but she was not moving. It was a complete mannequin. No movement. And another chimpanzee that had this thing that didn't look like a chimpanzee, but one of the lab technicians, she used her hand wearing some type of a glove, and she was caressing this baby chimpanzee. Guess which one of those babies survived? The one that actually had this relatedness happen to it. I don't know if it was a male or a female. But the other one died within a few days. So that's what my intention, I mean, it's stemming from in me saying that. I hope that answers your question. And our time's up, but please feel free to ask me after.